Hey everybody, Happy New Year's. So we're doing Sonic Frontiers now. I thought that the Freedom Plan Duology was up next, but I was going to do those games, but then I realized the second game is over 40 hours long if you do all the characters campaign, so I just decided to review that next time. And I actually put up a poll asking you guys what game I should review next, and most of you guys said Frontiers, and hey, the fans have spoken.
Anyway, when Sonic Frontiers was first revealed in that first Sonic Central back in early 2021, people were very skeptical to say the least. I actually did a reaction to that direct when it first came out, and I was honestly just kind of confused because it was just 30 seconds of Sonic running and it didn't really leave us a lot to work with. But then a new trailer was shown at the Game Awards, finally showing us more of an idea of what the game is about. I remember people comparing this to Breath of the Wild because of how you're traveling through all these huge islands and you're fighting this colossal titan. I remember not really liking the original logo for this game, it just looked a little bit too basic for me, but I'm glad that they changed it. There were a lot of eyebrows raised, some people were excited and others just thought that this game would fail. Especially because of how they thought that this game was going to use the same model for forces again, and they got mad about its cool size. You guys just use any excuse to bash on forces, do you? Zuka said in an interview that this game was going to be open world, or open zone, because you do a lot of things that you'll be doing in a normal open world game, like Breath of the Wild or Elden Ring, but with Sonic elements brought to it.
You know, weird thing about that is I actually remember like wanting a open world Sonic game, kind of like Jak and Daxter or, you know, Assassin's Creed, because like it would be cool to see Sonic like step away from his like original formula, or at least like try something new, you know.
So people were just feverishly waiting for them to finally release gameplay for the game so we can know if it's good or not, but apparently some gameplay got leaked a little bit earlier before the gameplay was showed off, but in mid-June last year, we finally got a look at how the game is like, and I mean, this definitely isn't Elden Ring, that's for fucking sure. It's not even Breath of the Wild or Assassin's Creed. We all know the story at this point. People did not like the way that Frontiers looked. People on Twitter were just slamming it because they just thought that Sega was just doing the bare minimum to qualify this as a game. My thoughts were mostly like everyone else's. I just thought that the game looked like a tech demo or an early build of the game. And it just looked like there were just going to be important Sonic Forces controls in an open space. And also doesn't really help that the guy who was playing the game when the footage was completely garbage at it. As the game kept on getting shown off, it started looking better and better to the point where it started to look like a completely different game to some people. It also helps that Sega finally decided to not be so cryptic with the details about the game. We got trailers for the story, an overview of the combat and game's mechanics, and a showdown trailer. We saw a lot of scenes with this new character named Sage, saying how Sonic's actions are endangering our planet. This had fans shitting their pants in anticipation and just counting down the days until the game came out, and a lot of people were changing their minds about Frontiers. I even heard how some Switch owners were making Frontiers their main third-party game for this year. I will still keep my hopes low, but if I'm being honest, after seeing some of the newer trailers, my feelings went from skeptical to cautiously optimistic because I was just thinking, wow, this game actually looks pretty good now.
Yeah, I thought that the game looked better than its initial showing, but at the same time, I wasn't really going into this game thinking like it was going to be amazing, because like after being pretty disappointed with Forces, I didn't want to get my hopes up high again and get underwhelmed by how mediocre or just straight up garbage the game was.
It also didn't really help that the game's marketing was so bad, at least when it was first being teased, because Sega took it way too long to show us what the game was like and what the story is. That just had me thinking that even if the game is actually really good, because the marketing was so terrible, besides Sonic fans, no one will actually buy it. But at least it got better over time, but goddamn, they should have showed the newer trailers first. The one thing I was confident about this game, I was gonna go in and think, damn, Sonic Frontiers is gonna have a great soundtrack because Sega posted a lot of samples of some of the songs in this game, and I gotta say, the vocal tracks in the Frontiers, in my opinion, are some of the best vocal tracks in the entire series. Like, every song in this game goes hard. Undefeatable, Find Your Flame, Vandalize, Break Through It All, specifically the second half of Break Through It All. I felt like this song takes a little bit too long to get to the main chorus of it. I'll admit, I didn't really like I'm Here that much when I heard the sample version that Sega posted on the channel, but when I listened to the full song, I just couldn't stop listening to it. But I want to save the music critique until later in the video. But when release day came, I was honestly surprised to hear that a lot of people, even people outside the fan base, really love Frontiers. Everyone was praising it. People were saying that it's one of, if not the best Sonic game of all time. IGN gave it a 7 out of 10. A lot of the reviews on Steam by actual people who played the game have been overwhelmingly positive. But there are some people who don't like Frontiers, and if we're being real here, that was kind of inevitable. But I feel like the enjoyers outweigh the people who don't like it. So this made me even more interested in getting the game, but I was still working on a Sly Cooper marathon at that point, so the timing just wasn't right.
But here we are, I finally played Sonic Frontiers, and what are my thoughts on the game? Well, I'm gonna have to start talking about the story here, so I really like dive into my experiences. So like, if you don't want any of that spoiled for you, then you know I'll leave a timestamp for you guys to skip to, just to avoid all that. I don't know why you would watch the video in the first place if you want to avoid getting spoiled, but hey, I appreciate you watching anyway.
The story starts off with Eggman in the woods searching for an ancient artifact, and he tries uploading his AI into it, but for some reason, it activates protective protocol, and Eggman gets sucked into the artifact because of it. Then we cut to Sonic, Tails, and Amy flying on a tornado for the first time since, like, Lost World, into the Starfall Islands, but because of a change in altitude, Tails loses control of the plane, and the trio is separated after they fly into a wormhole. Sonic finds himself in this digital world called cyberspace, and this is where the game begins. I was a little bit taken aback at how fast we got into the game. We don't even see the three getting lost while they're in the wormhole. It's just they get sucked in, and we just jump into this. Sonic controls pretty decently, he goes where I want him to go, and I feel like I'm responsible for what happens to him. Everything feels like it did before, jumping, sliding, boosting, stomping, quick-stepping, but for some reason, the homing attack is back on the score button like it was in Unleashed. I thought that was pretty weird since the homing attack was on X since Colors. I mean, it's not as bad as it was in Unleashed since boosting isn't mapped to the same button as the homing attack anymore, but now boosting is on R2. Well, why? This took me the longest time to get used to, but I feel comfortable with my default control stuff in this game, unless I'm quick-stepping while boosting, so now I gotta switch my hands around. But anyway, after all that, Sonic wakes up on an unknown island and he hears a voice telling him to murk all the Titans and collect all the Chaos Emeralds. Since Sonic has jack shit for Elite, he does what the voice tells him to do and finds Amy trapped in this red barrier. Sonic explores the island and is finally able to free her from that barrier, and the energy from that barrier enters Sonic's body, but he just shrugs it off. But Amy isn't actually in her physical body, so the two know that they should search for the Chaos Emerald and free Amy from cyberspace. After collecting the second emerald, Sonic runs into this random girl who has the same glitched out appearance that Amy does. To try and stop Sonic from continuing his path from releasing Amy from cyberspace, she releases his Shadow of the Colossus looking motherfucker out to get Sonic, and she warns him not to fight it, but Sonic ignores her and gets his shit slapped into a bunch of mountains, and he realizes that he's gonna need the Chaos Emerald to even have a fighting chance. Later we find out that Eggman is actually trapped in cyberspace, and this girl, who's named Sage, is given orders by Eggman to help him escape from this world, and also give him updates about Sonic's progress. Back in Kronos Island, Sonic opens the path to the Titan named Giganto, and finds the final Chaos Emerald to turn into Super Sonic, and after landing the final blow, Giganto explodes and the voice guides Sonic to go to Ares Island. Unfortunately, defeating Giganto didn't free Amy from cyberspace, but Sonic goes to the next island to fight the other Titan, and on his way there, the Chaos Emerald scattered once again.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't want this to be easy anyway.
Sonic finds Knuckles trapped in the same red barrier that Amy was trapped in. I should probably bring this up since I know somebody will, but there's a 6-minute animation called Sonic Frontiers Diversions, which pretty much tells the story of how Knuckles got mixed up into all of this. He was investigating a mysterious ruins area, and he got trapped in this red orb until Sonic freed him. Sonic asks for his help to find the Chaos Emeralds and get back home, and that's the basic setup for this game. Free your friends, get the Chaos Emeralds, fight that world's Titans, you lose the Chaos Emeralds, and repeat. It isn't until the last 2 worlds in the game where the story actually starts to pick up, but I don't think that's too much of a bad thing, since Sonic Frontiers' story isn't so much about the overarching plot of freeing your friends and stopping the Titans, but it's more about the characters and seeing them growing and improving as people. Sonic Frontiers is way more character-driven than any other game before it, and I feel like that was kinda dumb because of how fans were complaining about the lighter tone that the series was taking during the last decade, and we were asking for more story stuff and complaining about how the characters were written, and while I don't really play Sonic games for the story, even I gotta admit that Frontiers knocked it out of par with the writing and the dialogue in this game. It also really helps that Ian Flynn, the writer of the IDW comics, was writing the story, and I haven't really sat down and read the IDW comics or the Archie comics, but I've seen bits and pieces of it, and it was pretty good, and I was kind of shocked to see that there was only 3 people who wrote the story. All the characters actually feel a lot more three-dimensional than they ever felt before. Amy especially, this is my favorite interpretation of her because she feels a lot more mature than she did before, and which is kind of amazing since she's still 12. And her little side story about helping the lost Coco find their mother, it kind of reminds me of how she was trying to protect the Flicky back in Adventure 1. I also love the direction that they go with Sonic and Amy's relationship in this game because, at least in the mainline stuff, this is the first time ever I've seen Sonic and Amy and just think that they're actually friends and they talk to each other like they have history together. Like, Amy's the crazy fangirl who's obsessed with Sonic. In fact, she acts more like Boom Amy, and it's even to the point where Sonic considers her just as much of a close friend as Tails and Knuckles are to him. Sonic isn't trying to save her because she got herself into this because she was chasing after him, or because circumstances just require him to rescue her, but to make sure that she's okay, because that's what friends do, look out for each other. This is the version of Sonic and Amy that I like to see, and I hope that the future games expand on this more, because it's pretty refreshing seeing this take of the pair in mainline games. I like how they have more of a brother-sister vibe here, and now, now that I bring that up, if they just drop this angle of Sonic and Amy and just go back to the status quo, it would make the brother-sister thing they have here kind of weird. How Knuckles is portrayed in this game really does the character justice. Instead of just being an idiot that punches first and asks questions later, Now he and Sonic are back to being rivals, or more like playful rivals. We even get to see a more emotional side of him where he just looks at the Coco Guardians and it reminds him of his Echidna tribe. Now he's the last one left. I should probably bring this up now, but throughout the game, you'll see cutscenes of an older civilization who used to reside in the Starfall Islands, and also a precursor to Chaos in Sonic Adventure 1, which doesn't really add a lot, but I think that's a cool bit of continuity. It's also revealed that Chaos Emeralds are from Sonic's world, and it was because of the Emeralds that they escaped from the populace from their world, and they landed on Earth because their energy reacted to the Master Emerald. Was anybody else thinking about the DreamWorks logo when they saw this moon? The destroyer of the world eventually found them on Earth and gave them the choice to use the Titans from each world to fight them off. One nation sacrificed their life to seal the foe within their mech, which made the other 3 Titans trapped in cyberspace to make sure they can't harm Earth again. I like this because we never had this much depth to any of the civilizations in a Sonic game since the Echidna tribe in Adventure 1, now that I think about it. But it's kind of retcons the Emerald's lore in Sonic Unleashed because in that game, the Chaos Emeralds have been a part of the Earth since the dawn of time, but in here, they're from another planet. I guess there's been 2 sets of emeralds this entire time. I wouldn't be surprised if they just came out and said that. But it's not like they completely throw that out of the window because Tales bring up how the power of the Ancients were fighting was on the same level as Dark Gaia, but it kind of feels random to just completely come up with new lore for the emeralds. Anyway, after Sonic defeats the Titan in Ares Island, he travels to Chaos Island and frees Tails. At this point, the cyberspace energy inside him is getting worse and worse, and he still doesn't see it as a problem. But I do like how in gameplay, when you progress more and more in the game, Sonic's outlet animations look like he's getting more and more worn out because of the cyberspace corruption, but he still run and jump like normal, so it's nothing more than just little details. But let's talk about Tails now. I really like how they try to redeem Tails from turning into a pussy when Chaos tries to attack him. It's pretty obvious that Sonic Team wanted to apologize about how dirty they did Tails and Forces, and I like how they gave him a reason why he froze up against Infinite, which I guess my friend Chaos Control VA was kinda right about his theory about that, in case you guys forgot.
For me, while Tails' new quirks did understandably set people off at first, I understand how it all works. Of course he's going to be afraid and cry for Sonic now that he's gone. He thought Sonic was dead. That was a traumatic experience for him, and someone in his condition would act the same way. Sure, it's not fully described on screen, but people just need to connect the dots for themselves.
And I also really like how they're not afraid of making fun of the bad writing that Tails had in some games.
Whenever there's a crisis, I'm either running away or standing on the sidelines. You're always rescuing me when all I do is follow you around.
Hey, who was it who stopped Eggman from blowing up Station Square, huh? And who broke me out of prison, or saved me from the Deadly Six's trap?
Then I'm wildly inconsistent.
I love how in this game that Sonic kinda has a big brother thing with Tails, and, you know, being a younger brother myself, this is a direction with Sonic and Tails that I can really dig. Sonic doesn't really get as much development as the other characters, but I feel like it's kinda like Sly and Sly 3, where it's just watching everyone else around him grow and mature himself. There's a lot of examples of how well the characters are written in this game, but let's save that for after the summary. Anyway, after defeating the 3rd Titan, the voice guides Sonic to deactivate towers, but the more towers he turns off, the worse his cyberspace corruption inside him gets, to the point where it straight up kills him, or how Tails says it. His consciousness is sucking inside cyberspace, but thanks to the real superpower of teamwork, Sonic and his friends rescue him, and now he, Eggman, and Sage work with them to find the rest of the Chaos Emeralds to fight the Supreme Titan. And when Super Sonic defeats it, Sage senses that there's been another entity that has been released, and it's so strong that not even Super Sonic can defeat it. So Sage realizes that the only way to get rid of that entity is to leave Eggman, and he reluctantly agrees to let her go. Super Sonic and Sage go to space to fight it, and Supreme launches Sonic into the End to deflect his energy blast, but the End pulls itself and blows itself up along with the planet, and Sage pulls a Goku and sacrifices herself, and the explosion causes a meteor shower which sends Sonic back to Earth, frees his friends from cyberspace, and Eggman mourns the loss of his daughter. Tails prepares a tornado, and Sonic and friends leave the Starfall Islands. Meanwhile, in after-credit scenes, Eggman is seen on his computer typing up a code, and the last thing we hear is Sage's voice coming out of that screen, and whether this means we're getting Frontiers 2, I'll leave that up to you.
So this story was a nice change of pace for Sonic. Like, I personally never really thought that the latter storytelling was like really killing the franchise like other people thought it was, but I really gotta say that Ian Flynn and all the other writers involved in this like really nailed it with the tone of this game.
The story does a great job of making it not overly serious or playing up the humor that much either. There's a good balance between both serious and emotional scenes, but also has some pretty good funny moments too. I mean, I never busted a gut at any of these jokes, but I did giggle a little bit though. The tone of the story is honestly what I look for in a Sonic story, instead of taking itself way too seriously to the point where it feels like a parody like in Shadow or 06, but at the same time not as lighthearted as Colors Generations or A Lost World. It's more like Sonic Unleashed or Adventure 1, and I guess Black Knight is like that too. I also feel like the voice acting in this game is some of the best in the series too. I don't think I've ever heard so much emotion in Roger's voice in the last 10 years. The only thing that kind of bothers me about it is how in the beginning of the game, he kind of does more deeper voice for Sonic, which kind of sounds like he's trying too hard to sound mature here.
Mortal,
Ugh. Hello?
you have done the impossible. You have escaped cyberspace through your own power. You are the key.
Key, huh? Sure beats being called a rodent. Are you saying I can rescue my friends?
But I hear how some people like it, so maybe I'm just in the minority on this. But the voice acting for the other characters really brings them to life, and this is also another aspect of this game's fantastic writing. I already talked about Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, but let's get into Sage and Eggman. I was kind of surprised at what they did with Sage in this game, because going off of the line she said in the trailer, the reckless actions endanger the world, it kind of gave me the impression that the Starfall Islands was her home, and Sonic freeing her friends is doing something that is inadvertently destroying her world, and she would be kind of like a villain who's trying to protect her world, but eventually will turn good, and I guess I was half right. But instead of being from the Starfall Islands, she's actually a creation of Eggman, but gains sentience when Eggman gets trapped in cyberspace. Sage in this game kind of reminds me of Blaze and Sonic Rush, except with two completely different arcs, but I guess they're not that different since both characters warmed up to Sonic as the game went on. She first started off as someone who's just taking orders from Eggman to keep an eye out on Sonic and give the Blue Hedgehog a lot of shit as he continued his adventure, to someone who would come to respect Sonic and more after seeing how far he would go to save his friends, and even left her in tears in one scene, which actually kind of hit me pretty hard the first time I watched it. I kind of have a theory that Sage might have been a regular little girl before she started taking orders from Eggman, because in that scene that I was talking about, she started flashing a teal colors, so that kind of made me start to think about it. Anyway, after all that, she starts looking for that same type of love and affection from Eggman that Sonic and his friends show, and the cool thing is that the feeling isn't one-sided either. Eggman first saw Sage as a means to an end, but the more she protected him from the dangers of cyberspace, the more he started seeing her as someone he respects, and it kind of gave the two a little bit of a father-daughter relationship, and I really like that. But to get the most out of that, you need to read these Eggman memos, which is something I didn't know about until I finished the game, so yeah, thanks guys. So without reading these, Eggman's feelings towards Sage can just feel like they just came out of nowhere, but at the same time, as someone who didn't read them, it didn't really matter to me since I just immediately connected to these two because I was just interested to see how far they would go with this plotline. And I really like how they humanize Eggman in this game, and you can tell by how much passion Mike Pollock puts in his performance as Eggman. Like the scene where he grants Sage permission to help out Sonic, or when he lets Sage leave him in order to save the planet knowing that it might be the final time that he sees Sage. And the ending where Eggman mourns Sage's death, I usually don't get teary-eyed when I'm playing games or watching any type of media in general. The only thing that comes close is in that one South Park episode where Stan turns 10. Shit was sad, bro. And even then, I wasn't really bursting out in tears at the end of this game, but after I watched all the cutscenes and went to the title screen, I was just left with a small moment of silence just to reflect on everything that I just went through, and not a lot of games in general, not just Sonic games, gave me that feeling after I finished it. I mean, I don't really think that this game's story is perfect though. I was kind of expecting them to do a little bit more with the cyberspace corruption in Sonic because that was one of the key details in the trailers, and in the game, as Sonic frees his friends, the more cyberspace energy goes inside him and starts corrupting him. And in the scene where Sonic just turns into a statue after all the energy he consumed him was way too much for him to handle, and Tails said that Sonic was now stuck in between realities, but after Tails, Amy, and Knuckles just hold hands around each other, they just snap Sonic right back to normal. The plotline really feels unfinished because it was just resolved in one cutscene. I feel like the only other way for the storyline to get the proper resolution is to have us go through levels inside of Sonic's subconscious. It could be like this glitched out area where all you see is faint voices of Sonic's friends and visions of memories from past games, or maybe the cyber corruption could have separated Sonic into another entity who's evil, and then just started beating the shit out of his friends. Meanwhile, the real Sonic is stuck inside of his mind, while the cyber corrupted Sonic is in control of it the whole time. And eventually, Sonic's friends find a way to absorb the corrupted cyber energy inside of him, trapping the cyber corrupted Sonic and bringing the real Sonic back into reality. I just pulled that out of my ass right now. My point is, I feel like Ian Flynn's team could have come up with something better with a pretty good concept and would have really been cool with the proper execution. But that's really the only problem I have with the story that I really enjoyed. My eyes were glued to the screen, I was wondering what would happen next, I was really interested in the storyline and how the characters were developing. I think that the story is like an A-, and I mean like a really good A-.
But Sonic Frontiers is a video game and not a book, so does it handle the transition to an open world video game with all the elements from Sonic that we know and love pretty well?
If we're talking graphically, then yeah, I think so. I honestly think that this game is on the same level as Sonic Unleashed on how great the game can look. The texture work looks good, the light looks really nice, and the atmosphere in a lot of these areas do a great job in creating ambience since the game has a day and night system, but since there's no loading screens in the open zone, the sky just goes from day to night organically. Also, I just find myself turning the camera just to get a good scope of the islands in this game. The only problem I have with the graphics is how frequent the pop-in is for this game. Just to be clear, I'm playing this game on PS4, but apparently this problem is on every version of the game. PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series X, Switch, hell, even the PC version isn't safe from these issues, but I'm pretty sure someone already made some mods to fix that. And it's not just something that happens when you're far away, sometimes things can just appear into existence when you get closer to it. And seeing how this console can run a game like Spider-Man Miles Morales, then it really shouldn't be that hard to just optimize it well enough so that won't happen. But if it was something that was completely out of their control, like they couldn't fix it, at least have the objects fade in the closer you get to them, not have them pop up like that. Seriously, it really just takes me out of the game whenever that happens. But hey, at least Sonic's combat animations don't look as janky as they did in those initial gameplay footage. I remember being pretty skeptical about how the game character models looked in the game, but I eventually warmed up to them the more I kept on playing. I really love how expressive everyone could be, and I really like how Sonic and friends use their eyelids a lot more than the emo. I thought that was a pretty good detail, and they're animated pretty smoothly despite how lackluster models can look at first glance. And the cutscenes are nice to look at too. I really like how for one cutscene, they did a motion picture segment, and it kind of reminded me of how the cutscenes in the storybook games are represented. I do wish that they were a little bit more consistent with it because it's really weird looking at the characters go from being animated really well in one cutscene and then just move their lips and turn their heads like they're GTA NPCs in the next one. And since I usually talk about the soundtrack with graphics, the soundtrack in this game is so goddamn good. The vocal themes, I thought they're amazing and they work really well with the boss fights that they're in, and lyrics for I'm Here and Vandalize really hit different after playing the game.
Hey, you guys remember when Sonic fans were going crazy because of the fact that Vandalize said fuck in the song? And completely ignoring the fact that this isn't the first time that song has sworn before. It's like, why are you guys making a big deal out of it now?
But even some of the more slow and atmospheric songs are just really nice to listen to. I really love some of the themes for when you're facing off against some of the Guardians. You can actually buy the whole soundtrack on Apple Music, so if you want it, then go for it. But okay, the actual gameplay. This game places Sonic in an open world area, and I hear people compare this to Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring, but honestly, I get a lot of the Mario Odyssey vibes at some point. The main collectible is the Chaos Emeralds, and you have to collect these from either doing plot-related side missions like guiding these Coco to their mother, or collecting enough gears for the army Coco, or from these Volt Keys you can do from completing these cyberspace levels. Cyberspace are these miniature levels that you need to activate in order to get these Volt Keys. To get into cyberspace levels, you need to get these portal gears that you can find in mini-bosses with little flagpoles and other guardians around the area. So for cyberspace itself, I'm a little bit mixed on it. Sometimes I really like these levels, and it's really fun doing all these missions that you can do to get the other 3 keys. There's 4 missions in these levels that you can do, like just finishing the level, getting all the red rings, collecting a set number of rings, and beating the level within S-ring time. I just wish that some of these levels weren't so strict with the S-ring time. But I do wish that they had more level themes than they had here. Well, all we have here is Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and a city theme, and this is even weirder when you think about the in-game reason why this is all here, because the cyberspace levels are actually Sonic's memories, and that's why he's able to go in and out of cyberspace so easily. So if they were going to go with that, then why not just reuse assets from older games? Why would Sonic be able to remember the layouts of these levels but not how they look like? I would have loved for them to just go all out with this idea. I mean, they make a lot of throwbacks to older games levels, but sometimes it's just straight up ripped out of the older games. Like this drifting level is from Missouri from Sonic Unleashed, and this is literally Dragon Road from Unleashed. Here's Metal Harbor for Sonic Adventure 2, and that's Sky Sanctuary from Generations, right down to the goddamn level assets. But that's not the only problem I have with cyberspace here. The control. God, what the hell happened here? I don't think it would have been that hard to just port the controls from the open space into these levels, but it's like it's 2 different control schemes that I gotta get used to. It's not so bad in 2D, but in 3D, it's fucking terrible. I didn't really notice this until I got to the Dragon Road stage, but Sonic's jump weighs a metric ton, it's so heavy while turning, and he carries so much forward momentum with it too. His turning angle while running feels weird too, because anytime I try to make a sharp turn, Sonic awkwardly brushes himself against the wall because I can't turn sharp enough. It makes doing some of the simplest things like collecting red rings a massive pain in the ass, because I gotta be careful about how I jump and where I position myself. Again, the blueprints were there in the open zone, what happened? Overall, I think that they could expand on this concept in the future, but in this game specifically, cyberspace starts off pretty decent, then it just kinda nosedives for me. But since we're on the topic of controls, I talked a little bit about Sonic's control in the open space, but I didn't bring up the fact that Sonic has the lightspeed dash by default, but it kind of felt a little bit weird using the L button to perform it, but I guess it wouldn't make a lot of sense to map it to the triangle and make the side loop either on L2 or on the L button. That would feel really awkward, and I got used to it fast, so it's not that big of a deal. Something that was really weird for me was how Sonic kinda does his jump after he stomps, which doesn't really sound that bad, but in the boost games, I usually like to stomp just to make sure that I don't fall into a bottomless pit. But since Sonic does his jump now, it leads me to doing a mistimed boost and falling to my death, but other than that, Sonic control is fine here. After collecting 400 rings, you activate Sonic Boost, which lets you blast through with Sonic Speed, and with your speed maxed out, you can blaze through these large maps and to making it to your destination as fast as you can, and it's so exhilarating too, until I collide into an incline and suddenly I go like, whoop! I also wish that you can skip this cutscene that plays every time you activate it. It's cool the first time, but it takes me out of the game every time that happens. Sonic also has the drop dash from Mania, and you can get some pretty good speed with it too, and you can also climb up steep surfaces if you time it just right. Sonic has some combat in this game, which hasn't been a thing in a Sonic game since Unleash, and I guess Black Knight 2 if you want to count the sword gameplay. At first it's nothing really special, you're just spamming square over and over again, but some enemies drop skill points which can be used to get new moves for your skill tree, and you can unlock a lot of new moves so you can have a lot of variety in your moveset. And you get all the skill tree moves pretty quickly if you grind for skill points. I think I got all of them by the time I finished Ares Island. This game has a lot of mini bosses, and with all these moves that you can unlock, it's a lot of fun using all these moves just to beat the shit out of these guys. I think my favorite unlockable move is the Sonic Boom, which is that Sonic kick all these projectiles, and it's really useful against these big blob things. I'm not sure what they're called, but it's good for just taking these guys out faster. The Spin Slash is pretty cool too, has decent coverage and range, and it's a cool visual too. There's also the parry technique that Sonic can do, which just lets him pimp slap the Guardians for a counter attack, and this made me feel like a god every time I pulled it off until I realized that you can just hold the shoulder button for as long as you want, and Sonic would just stole the parry. Water Rush and the Stomp attack is a pretty good finishing combo too. I also use the Cyclone Click a lot too. I also love whenever Sonic home attacks now, there's a little pause and the screen shakes a little bit too, kinda makes it feel like it has more of an impact. The focus of Sonic's new abilities is the Side Loop, which adds a trail that follows Sonic, and if he makes a circle, then enemies fly up so Sonic can have an easier time taking them out. You can unlock secret puzzles or new challenges all over the map. You can also do a side loop around the ground to make rings just pop up in case you're in a mini boss fight and you're low on rings. You can even make a figure eight to give yourself infinite speed for a little bit. You can actually level up Sonic's stats in this game too, like in the Sonic Unleashed, but not through XP this time. In this game you can upgrade Sonic's strength, defense, speed, and ring capability. Throughout the areas, you'll find these seeds of power and defense, and the Lost Coco, and you can take them to the Hermit Coco or the Elder Coco. It's crazy how fast you can max out your strength and defense if you have enough seeds, but it takes way too long to fully level up your speed and ring capacity, because it levels up one at a time, and you have to stand there for minutes on end just to reach the max level. If they were going to do that, the least they could do is make it more consistent, because it's weird to make the process to upgrade your power and defense so fast, but then make upgrading ring capacity and speed so slow. But I want to talk about the open zones now. I said that the Chaos Emeralds were the main collectibles in this game, but 2 or 3 emeralds are a lot behind side quests, and the only way you'll be able to access those side quests is by collecting the memory tokens that are in each island, and you collect these tokens to unlock some of the main story paths and some side stories too, and you get memory tokens by doing all these miniature obstacle courses that are plastered everywhere on the islands, and you have multiple ways to find all these tokens, and it feels so free to tackle all these challenges any way you want. In fact, one of the things I love about Frontiers is that it kind of celebrates the non-linearity of the series. In the older games, it was mostly a straight line, but there was a lot of different ways to get to the goal ring. Here, if you don't want to tackle the main story objectives yet, then you can just do more of these platforming challenges, then you can go to that story objective. It really feels like the sky's the limit with how you progress in this game. I just don't really like how you can get locked into a 2D section for no reason, and this is all over the 3rd island. Memory tokens aren't the only thing that you can collect here. You can also map out the island locations by doing these little mini challenges, and I like these, but this is the only way to figure out where is where, but because your map is blank when you first start out, and you can't know where previous locations are, even if you've already been there before. And this has worse at Chaos Island, because that island's map is massive, and it's easier to get lost in the island too, and I know it sounds kinda nitpicky to complain about getting lost in an open world game, but hear me out. All the islands have pretty broad level design. They're huge, but at the same time, they're pretty fun to travel through, even without a minimap, which I was pretty worried about at first, but since Sonic goes pretty fast, I got over it. But with Chaos Island, it's actually multiple islands in one, so you have to look all over the place to find where the island interconnects, and it's just so tedious. I only spent over an hour looking for one Chaos Emerald because I couldn't remember where that entrance to the island was. So my first hour and a half with this island was basically me just going
forward and back, and then forward and back, and then go forward and back, then put 1 foot forward.
For things that shouldn't be a problem. I didn't know that setting markers on the map would have made this a lot easier, but I didn't know that I could do that until the last island in the game. This is easily my least favorite island in the game, and I'm sure that kind of comes as a surprise to some of you. I'm pretty sure you were expecting me to give that title to Ria Island, but I actually don't mind this island because it's only there for story purposes. And it also helps that completing this island only takes like 30, maybe 20 minutes if you're fast enough. It does kind of suck how you're given all this wide open space and you don't do a lot in it, but other than that, I thought it was pretty good fun.
The weird thing about all this is that I remember being really skeptical hearing that Sonic Frontiers would be like 10 to 20 hours long, since like Sonic games never really go over 7 to 8 hours long, 10 hours at the most. So I was just wondering how they be able to stretch this game out for like another 10.5 hours, and I feel like they actually did it. When I finished the game, I had 15 hours on my save file, but honestly, it didn't really feel that long. And it was weird too, because all these items take about like 2 to 3 hours to complete, but even then, I didn't get bored, I wasn't frustrated, I just couldn't put the controller down. All my sessions with this game have just flown by smoothly. I will honestly be surprised at how long I would be recording. Even 100% completing all these items didn't take as long as I thought it would. I even platinum trophy this game too. I guess you got me there. I don't have anything to say about that.
But you don't have to do anything in the open world to beat the game. You can find purple coins in the island, and there's a portal that takes you to Big's fishing minigame. And I love how Sonic gets surprised at how Big's here in the first place, then Big just says that he's fishing and he just accepts it.
Oh, hey Sonic, you come here to fish too?
Big, what are you doing here? How did you get here? What even is here?
I don't know. I was looking for fishing spots and wound up here. So now I'm fishing.
Of course you are.
Anyway, something like fishing in Adventure 1, all you do is cast your lure out, press the button, and then you're good. I love how every time Sonic pulls out a fish, this cutscene plays like you just tapped into Ultra Instinct. Every fish and items, what the fuck is a chest doing here in a lake? Counts up to 8 to 64 tokens, and you can use those tokens to buy everything. Memory tokens for story objectives, or even the portal keys. And the token cap is 999, so if you know where to find a fishing portal, you could beat this game without doing any cyberspace levels or fighting a boss. That's crazy, but if you play the game like that, you'll be missing out on like 75% of the game. But it's cool that it's even an option anyway. When you get to the second island, you'll get hit with a meteor shower where you can collect all these Starbits and play a casino minigame to get a lot of purple coins for Big's fishing minigame. And it's pretty cool the first time, but it'll eventually wear off you. But who thought it was a good idea to make it last the entire night cycle? Anyway, after you collect all the Chaos Emeralds and you're able to fight the Titans, oh my god, the boss fights are easily the best part of Frontiers. All these guys could easily be the final boss of any other Sonic game, but it's really cool being able to use Super Sonic for regular bosses after being a final boss thing for over 20 years at this point. The scale of these fights are so massive, and you have Kellen Quinn in the background going so goddamn hard on the music too. Like, it really gives me memory of the fighting Perfect Chaos for the first time in a Sonic adventure, and fighting Perfect Dark Guy in Unleashed 2. And I really love how they play up Super Sonic's strength in this game. In the older game, it was basically just like, oh cool, invincibility and you can fly. But in this game, a lot of these cutscenes play where it looks like it'd just be a fatality cutscene in a Mortal Kombat game. Like, look at this, Sonic can just open up Wyvern's mouth with his bare hand and target the heat-seeking missile to just target him and blow him up. He charges into Giganto like a golden missile. And the best one is where he's fighting Knight, where he catches the sword, then punches the shit out of him, makes him drop his sword, then he pulls the sword out of the ground and takes that sword, which is 10 times its size, and then slices the Titan in half like his Trunks. This game has some of the most hype boss fights in the entire series, and I would honestly say that these are the best Super Sonic boss fights in the entire franchise too. I just really wish that there weren't all these puzzles before you fight the bosses. I mean, I don't really mind the puzzle in Ares Island, and the one in Kronos Islands wasn't terrible, but it just takes a long ass time. But this fucking pinball machine in the Chaos Island, alright, casino levels have been a thing in Sonic games since Sonic 2, but it's not that it's a casino minigame, but it's the fact that you need 5 million fucking points to access the third boss, and it's like, why? I mean, to be fair, there is a score multiplier here, and when it gets to 256, then you'll be good, but it doesn't mean a goddamn thing where a pinball falls out of the table and I have to do it all over again. And the final boss, my god, every single boss in this game could be final boss material, and the actual final boss is Bentley's Hack Pack. Okay, it's actually not that bad. It's actually really fun, but this was a really disappointing way to finish off the game. Especially because the game has some of the best Super Sonic fights in the series, but I guess it's just asking a little bit too much. So yeah, the game has a couple of issues, and I didn't really care a lot for cyberspace, but Sonic Frontiers is like the most fun I've ever had with a 3D Sonic game since Generations. Yeah, the game at its lowest moments can be pretty boring, frustrated, or just annoying, but at its best, I really think that Frontiers is one of the best in the series. I was genuinely invested in the story, the sense of discovery felt really rewarding, post-game completion was pretty fun, and doesn't take too long, so it's pretty easy to do over a weekend. The combat's pretty simple and easy to get into. The boss fights were so exhilarating, the soundtrack, especially the vocal tracks, are the best, and the game looks pretty good.
good, except when shit just pops into reality. I don't know if I would put this game up here with some of my favorite Sonic games. I might have to play it again after this video, but since I was going into this game with pretty low expectations, for a $60 price tag, this game gives you a lot to do, and I don't regret all the hours I put into this game. If games like this are what's in Sonic's future, then I'm down for that. But at the same time, I don't know if me being excited for the next mainline game is a good selling point for me, because Sonic Team has just shown us something good way too many times and just completely messed it up for the next game. So Sonic Team and Sega, if you somehow came across this video, please just know this.
All you gotta do is not fuck up.
But Sonic Frontiers is still a fun game, and it comes recommended too. You know, I remember seeing a lot of people saying that 2022 was gonna be like the year of Sonic, and like, I remember being kind of like skeptical about that. I was like, okay, you can think that, but like, I feel like it's kind of too early to see. But honestly, I feel like they were kind of right. Because the second Sonic movie was just as good as the first as expected. Outside the glitches, Sonic Origins was a good collection of the classic games, which ported Sonic 3 and Knuckles for the first time since the DS collection in 2008. Sonic had his best 3D game since 2011, and Sonic Prime was actually a real good show, so I guess Sonic fans had a good 2022. I also remember our friend Josh saying that since the game was being released like a week before Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, that it would kind of just be overshadowed by it, but since everybody hated that game, I guess it was kind of a good thing for Sonic Frontiers. You know, like when you think about it.
Man, what the fuck is you talking about? Was that?
But now that we're out of one Sonic game, we're going into another one. Well, more like a Sonic fan game, since the next video is going to be on the Freedom Planet duology, and don't worry, I'll actually gonna make a video on those two games. But yeah, and after that, I actually have a lot of plans. I'll actually have a lot of videos planned for this year, so I hope you guys look forward to that. So all that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.